and welcome back to Bookish Theories! In today's video I would like to talk about Tomorrow by Together's The Chaos chapter Fight or Escape, focusing on a little breakdown and analysis of the clues that we have so far to see what they can tell us about the upcoming comeback. The Chaos chapter Fight or Escape is a repackaged album set to be released on the 17th of August that will include songs already featured in Freeze as well as an unspecified number of new songs. Now, since this is a repackaged album, Fight or Escape will likely continue the storyline already introduced back in Freeze, and the title of the album itself seems to confirm this as well. If we go back and take a look at the Freeze concept trailer, for instance, the video began with a tagline that said fight, flight or freeze, which in physiology are defined as the three possible ways the body usually reacts to a danger. As I mentioned back in my video about it, when something threatens our safety, we can either fight the danger, run from danger, or freeze in place. So if Freeze focused on the last reaction, chances are their fight or escape will center around the other two possible responses. Now right off the bat, this is very interesting because in the last album, the danger that caused the boys to freeze was not a physical threat, but rather a more insidious one that many people face every day. You see, back in Freeze, the boys had to deal with the overwhelming feelings usually associated with growth. The concept dealt with themes of depression, anxiety, and fear. It portrayed the importance of finding comfort in your imagination, but also the dangers of losing yourself in your own mind. And even if 0 by 1 Love Song focused on the way love is able to save you with its light, the album ended with the boys descending into chaos and being taken over by anxiety. Now, considering that in the album preview we can see the phrase "what do you worry about," it seems the Fight or Escape will continue to explore the very same topics, maybe dealing with the way people can either confront these struggles or find a way to escape them. One thing that is important to point out, however, is that much like 0 by 1 Love Song, the teaser for the logo seems to focus once again on the heart, and this is very telling because back in Freeze, the heart was a symbol associated to you. This might be an indication that, like in the past, you might be the solution to the problem, so if the boys will have to fight or escape their issues, chances are that you might be the reason they are fighting for or the person through which they will be able to escape. When it comes to the possible concept that they might follow, on the other hand, the preview is already giving us a couple of clues that are very interesting to point out. Much like in 0 by 1 Love Song, for instance, the album once again focuses on the contrast between loser and lover, meaning that once again the concept might have something to do with Stephen King's It. Now this would actually make a lot of sense, not only because in that story the losers turn into lovers because of the connection that they share, but also because in many respects the enemy that they face might also have a lot in common with the danger that Tomorrow by Together have to confront in the story. Here's the thing, back in 0 by 1 Love Song, the concept was explained with a reference to a book called Manhole. This is a coming-of-age story about a boy who has a very difficult life and finds refuge in a metaphorical manhole that gives him comfort and allows him to escape from his traumas. This manhole, however, also gives him access to the black hole inside of himself, and in the video we see Yeonjun experiencing the very same thing. When he imagines his adventure with the others, for instance, this fantasy gives him comfort like the imaginary manhole of the book. When he dives too deep into this illusion, however, the video also shows us that Yeonjun ends up backing away into complete darkness, meaning that much like in the novel, this manhole gives him access to the black hole inside of himself. Very simply put, his way of coping with his problems also becomes the source of his doom, because by indulging too much in fantasy, Yeonjun gets lost in it and loses touch with reality. Now this idea is also confirmed in Frost, where the song tells us that the boys have lost their minds, the hole in their heart has gotten bigger, and even their island of dream has become a place filled with anxiety. This means that their imagination is both a source of comfort and dread, because if on the one hand it allows them to escape in a fantasy, on the other it can also turn this fantasy into a nightmare. Now this is where It comes into play, because even if in the story the monster is often portrayed as a clown, It is a cosmic entity that actually takes the shape of its victim's worst fear. You see, in the story, the creature feeds on children because their imagination makes them tasty. Since kids are more creative than adults, It uses their creativity against them by creating monsters that terrifies them, and even if the losers eventually beat the creature because of their creative power, it's also true that their creativity is the very thing that puts them in danger to begin with. Now, if we consider this concept in the context of the Chaos chapter, the comparison is very easy to draw, because in both cases the character's imagination is something that has the potential to save them or doom them depending on the situation. Much like in our story, moreover, it shows us that the threat that the children have to confront is literally in the sewers. The losers here have to go through a manhole that gives them access to a world where their worst fears come to life, so if Fight or Escape will continue to follow the same analogy, it's possible that when the boys access the black hole inside of themselves, they will meet the very thing that scares them the most. Now, since in the story we do have a cosmic entity that preys on kids and is able to shape-shift, it's very possible that this comeback might also show us the return of the Odette cat, but whether this will be the case or not, it might foreshadow the metaphorical journey that the boys will have to face in the story. When it comes to the actual concept, however, the album preview also gives us some unexpected clues, because if you look closely, the Escape version foreshadows a theme that seems to focus on a heist. If among the stickers we see words like Honey, Robber, and Cloud, the photocard has the shape of a bell, meaning that the boys might be playing the role of robbers that steal something and have to escape because of that. If this is the case, however, we also need to understand how the heist might fit into the storyline, and in order to do that, we have to look at these clues in context. If we take a look at the stickers, for instance, we see that Honey, Robber, and Cloud are paired up with words with a much more positive meaning. Honey is paired with honey, Robber with lover, and Cloud with cloud, all of which seem to foreshadow some kind of duality, which incidentally is also shown in the photo card, with the lover's side associated to the heart and the loser associated to the dollar sign. Now, if we consider this in context, this might actually be a twist on the angel-devil contrast already established in the past. If the angels are the lovers linked to clouds and honey, the devils might be the losers who want money and are ready to steal it, but if you look closely, this contrast is not explored in reality, but rather inside of themselves. If we take a look at the bill, for instance, we see that this photo card is an AR card, meaning that it's related to a concept set in the augmented reality. Now, this is a world that was first introduced back in Minisode 1, and in contrast to reality and the virtual reality, which essentially exist independently from one another, the AR is a world that mixes reality and fantasy together. Now, this is very important because, as I mentioned earlier, Freeze ended with chaos taking over. The dream is filled with anxiety, reality is a mess, the boys are struggling, and everything is confused. So this might be an indication that in Fight or Escape, the boys will go on a journey in a world where everything is mixed together and the two sides of them overlap with one another. If the Fight version is more focused on the cute side of the boys with their own animals and the symbols that we saw back in the Questioning films, the Escape version seems to focus much more on their duality and inner conflict. These two sides, however, might come together in this comeback, because if the concept will indeed revolve around a heist, this robbery will involve both the lovers and the losers, the angels and the devils, as well as reality and fantasy. If we look back at the story, for instance, Yeonjun is already a thief. In Magic Island he stole the candles on the train, and in 0x1 Love Song he stole the car, so if this journey will continue down his black hole, this might imply that the heist is a fantasy that is mixed with the reality of the character. As it turns out, however, this robbery might have bigger stakes than what it seems, because if you look closely, the bill that we see is 100 tomorrows, meaning that the boys will not be stealing money, but rather their own future. If this is the case, then this concept might revolve around them fighting for their tomorrow and escaping the danger by stealing time, and this brings us right back to the Doom's Night, where the boys have to defeat their enemy in order to save their tomorrow. Back in that video, the star knew countless futures and helped Subin to go back in time in order to save it, and since the star is you, chances are that Moa will have a role to play in this comeback as well. To know if I'm right or wrong, however, we'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and if you did, please think about liking and subscribing. As always, thank you so much for watching, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye bye!